This dream report is a little different than the others, as it begins with real events, in the waking world. Yesterday I had to go to Costco to pick up a prescription that I had filled. I was the first one in the door at 10 a.m., and I quickly made my way back to the pharmacy. Once there, I was greeted by a very beautiful woman wearing the standard white pharmacist's smock. She looked familiar to me, but I knew I had never seen her at the pharmacy before, but still, she conjured up some forgotten emotional memory within me that I just couldn't place at that moment. She said hello, and something else that I couldn't quite make out, so I just said hello and grinned like an idiot. I immediately looked to see if she was wearing an ID badge, or some other name tag on her person, but couldn't find one. So I just stood there looking at her, and trying to figure just where it was I had seen her before as she rung up my drugs. If I had seen this woman before I would have known it, tall and slender, with short black hair and a face that reminded me somewhat of Natalie Portman. Well, I couldn't figure out why she looked so familiar as I drove home, and so I decided to just file it away as one of those things you never quite figure out. Intergalactic Conquistador. I was aboard a dropship or shuttlecraft if you will. It had just departed from our mothership, which was in orbit above the planet we were preparing to invade and conquer. The shuttlecraft zoomed in low across the treetops. Below on the ground I could see brutal battles taking place. Soldiers outfitted like myself in highly polished armor of all shapes and colors, engaged in vicious combat with darkly attired natives. The soldiers from our world were using what I understood to be power swords, huge shiny steel blades about 8 feet in length from tip to hilt. The power swords were held much like a person would hold a chainsaw, and in fact they were very much like chainsaws, however they were fueled by the soldier's aura. Now the entire planet we were invading resembled some 16th century Central American jungle. In fact, the entire planet was something like the 16th century Central American jungle, complete with pyramid structures, dense green forests and hot humid climate. The natives also had swords, but they didn't possess the power capabilities of our conquistador aura-powered swords. Whenever two opposing swords would clash together, our conquistador aura swords would activate by beginning to glow, and then much like a chainsaw it would easily cut through the lesser swords and shields of the natives. I was gearing up in the ready room when I had a few questions about our mission. Much to my surprise there stood the young lady I had seen earlier in the day at Costco. She was dressed in armor similar to myself as she began to explain to me how we had orders from High Command, and that Christopher Columbus himself had given orders to invade and conquer this planet, and the sword I would be using was one designed exclusively by him. My dream then took an unusual turn as I was no longer just along for the ride so to speak, but was starting to go lucid. I looked at her and I said, "I saw you today out in the real world. You were working at Costco and you looked so familiar to me." She laughed and said, "Real world?" She went on to say, "That's a side effect these new conquistador aura swords have on us, causing us to have difficulty discerning one world from the other," and added that she too had been experiencing similar effects. I responded, "Then I know you." She laughed again and answered, "Yes. You and I have been together for many years, and have been on many missions such as this one together." She continued, "You looked familiar to me as well, but we aren't supposed to have full knowledge of this or the other dimension while we're living in either. When you are asleep there, you exist here and vice versa." I took hold of my power sword from off the rack and it felt familiar and perfect. I could hardly wait to get down onto the planet and begin to smash my way through the native defenders. I never felt more alive or confident before in my life. I looked at the young lady at my side, and we both gave a wry smile as we exited the ship and headed into the jungle for battle and glory. And then I awoke. With this dream strong and fresh in my memory, I immediately began to write it down. Then it occurred to me, I still didn't know her name. As I sat there pondering what her name could be, I realized that I still had the receipt from the Costco pharmacy, and all I had to do was look at it and learn her name. Excitedly, I searched for the receipt in the trash. Upon finding it, I unfolded it and looked at the name printed thereon. Much to my surprise there was the name, but oddly the name was, Christopher. Update, Intergalactic Conquistador. 2 years have passed since I last encountered the mysterious woman of my dreams, while aboard the dropship about to disembark for battle. As noted, I first saw her in the waking world while purchasing pharmaceuticals at the local Costco. And then again, that very night, in the dream world while engaged in battle together against the inhabitants of a hostile planet. I believe I have found her again. She is now living in my neighborhood as a young woman. She walks her dog each morning past my place of employment. We have exchanged pleasantries. She is kind and beautiful, but I don't believe she has fully awakened from the influence of the power sword. If there is a destiny for us to share, then it will happen without any influence brought about by myself. Until then, if ever, I will wait and be happy that she crosses my path out in the waking world from time to time. If by chance I should ever be able to learn her name,